business.
Amazing.
Okay.
Here we go. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I hope that you're all doing well and that you're safe and healthy in the comforts of your home. We are so excited to have the one and only Joseph Barone with us today. I'll share a very brief introduction so that we can get started. Joe graduated from St. John's in 1984 with a BS in elementary and special education. He also has an MA in social studies education from Hunter College, as well as a professional diploma in training and management from NYU. He was previously the senior information officer with the World Bank in Washington, D.C. between 2003 and 2019. And his key responsibility was to manage the IT learning team. He was responsible for the analysis, the design, delivery, facilitation, and evaluation of both the off-the-shelf and proprietary applications. He also worked in the Department of Records and Information Services earlier in his career. And most recently, he founded a consulting company, A Fool for Learning, located in Silver Spring in Maryland. And he works with organizations to identify and deliver appropriate learning solutions to help them reach their goals and objectives. He's also a proud participant of our Alumni Insiders View DC program, which he's been supporting for many, many years. And he was also a student participant during his time at St. John's. He's a proud father of an alumna of the university, Alessandra. We're also very proud of. For your time, for sharing your talents and experiences with us. And without further ado, Mr. Joe Barone.
Well, thank you very much, Carolina, and I hope, thank you all for joining today. Our talk is entitled The Joys and Sorrows of a New Consultant. And I know you're not seeing me, you're just seeing my screen, but that's okay for now. And what this talk is going to focus on is my journey over the last year as a consultant, what I've done right and what I've done wrong, the joys and the sorrows. However, as in many of these presentations, it's important to tell you a little bit about myself. So let's focus on what I do as a Fool for Learning. And as mentioned by Carolina, and again, if anybody has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I do corporate learning, so I can help you with your e-learning, help you develop a whole learning program, maybe work with you on your evaluation, curation, which means kind of figure out for you what learning do you need and who is the best provider. Help you develop micro-learning, performance support tools, trainers. Maybe you have trainers and you want them to be better at what they do. We can help evaluate them. We can work with them. We can bring them up a couple of notches. And of course, workshop design and development. For those of you who are interested, you can come to my website. You can come and learn all about me, whether it be the news, mission services, or even go to my podcast channel. And you'll notice I have a podcast channel in which I have almost 90 podcasts on such topics as learning, training, networking, consulting, and in business general, or as I sometimes like to say, whatever other foolish thoughts I may have. So enough about me. Let's get a little bit into it. So how did I get from being a World Bank staff member, or sometimes it's called more, the official name is the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development. How did I get from there to being a consultant? So let's just take a little look at my journey. So I joined the bank in July of 1991 as a consultant. It was a full-time consultant. I worked internally for the bank doing training and learning for them in their information management. And in 1999, I was made a staff member. At that time, Microsoft had been sued because they were using so many people as consultants instead of hiring them as staff employees, that the bank was worried about themselves. And so a number of us were converted at that time. In April of 2018, I was offered a buyout, AKA a package, and it was a generous package. I have no complaints about that. And then in March of 2019 was my very, very last day of work. Of course, that immediately I did a soft launch of my company name, put it out there on LinkedIn, showed that this is where I was working, but I really didn't do much at that time. I kind of took a couple of months off, did all the things around the house that needed to do, around the beach house, that sort of stuff, things I needed to do, and also started to slowly get things ready in preparation for what we call the hard launch, when I actually said, yep, I've got to really start to do this. And I no more kind of hanging around the house, enjoying things, etc. I really got to get out and start hustling. And it took me a while, but my very first client was someone from the World Bank. I got my very first client. It was a small contract, nothing major, but at least I can say I had my very first client. Well, all of us in our lives at some point in time come to a crossroad, and I came at that crossroad when I was given that buyout. And of course, I believed I had three basic options at that time. Option one was I could go stay in the same exact field, trying for the same type of job. That was a possibility. A second option, or a second road that I could have taken, was to stay in the same field, but maybe try to take a job that is higher or a job that is lower. Either one would have been fine at that time. Or take a third option, which was go out on my own. And so I decided to go out on my own. And when you start as a consultant, there are basically four ways that I believe that people start out as consultants, starting their own business. And the first way is you return to your employer. There are many people who leave their employers, go out and strike it out on their own, and then get immediately hired back by their employer who says, you know, we really need you. You have the skills we need. We don't have anybody in-house that can do it. And even though we may be paying you more dollar-wise, hourly wage, in reality, they're saving lots of money because they don't have to pay you all sorts of benefits. So there are a number of people in the training field that I know of who've left, who've gotten rehired by their organizations to do just what they were doing before. Some stayed for a short period of time. Some stayed, one consultant I met stayed for 7 years doing it. Long time. You take clients with you. You leave your organization and you take your clients with you for whatever, and maybe you're an accountant, maybe you're an attorney, etc. If there's no sort of clause that says you can't, sometimes you will take them, or people will leave and follow you. The third way, and this is probably the most difficult of all the ways, and that's sort of what I did, was to start from scratch. I didn't return to my employer immediately. I didn't take clients with me. I started from scratch. I went out on my own, trying to, quote unquote, knock on doors, join networking groups, do all the things that you should be doing, and making mistakes, a lot of mistakes along the way. Of course, the last way that people get into consulting is they're starting on the side. They have a little side, as people like to call it now, sometimes a side hustle or a side business. And it gets to the point that you get so big and you're doing so much work, you have to make a decision. Do I keep the amount of business I take on the side down, or do I decide to take a chance, leave where I am, and start nice and fresh? The very first thing that all of us need to do as a consultant is you need to decide what is your product and or service going to be. And that's a decision that I had to make. And I decided, yes, I'm going to stay in the training and learning field. It's a product I know, a product that I have a track record on, and therefore I'm going to stay in that particular business. And by the way, as I'm talking about all of these things, it does not mean that these things happen sequentially. You do one and you do the next and you do the next. Many times you're doing many of these things all together. And for some people, the product and or service that they're selling is very easy. I am an attorney. I am an electrician. I do massage therapy. I do physical therapy. Those sorts of things are very, very cut and dry, and people understand them. But when you talk about doing learning, helping with the corporate learning field, it becomes very difficult. It's an added obstacle, if you want to call it. Instead of an obstacle, I should really say it's a challenge. Because when people talk to you, they kind of nod their head and go, yeah, okay. But they don't really understand what you do and how you do it. So doing what I'm doing, corporate learning, may resonate with people in large organizations, but the organizations that I'm targeting, small and medium sized, are much more difficult. Once you decide, or actually even before you decide you want to be a consultant, there are a number of financial considerations that you have to make. And this is really important for everyone out there. And some of these I didn't think of. Some of these I did think of, but some of them I didn't. And so let's talk about some of these. And the most important is that you have to have enough money on the side saved up to live, to survive, to pay your rent, to put food on the table, to pay the electric bill, the gas bill, the water bill, put gas in the car, and have money for repairs of the vehicle or the house, all of those sorts of things. Many people, many articles say you should have 3 to 6 months. I personally think you should have more. Again, it will depend upon if you're going out cold like I did, or if you already have a following. If you have a following, then maybe you don't need to put as much money saved. Maybe you only need to put 3 months or 6 months. But if you go out like myself, starting from scratch, then you have to go out and really put a lot of money on the side. And again, if anybody has any questions, feel free to put it in the chat. I am happy to answer any questions you may have. Other things you have to think about: what type of equipment do you need? Do you need a laptop? I had to buy a laptop. Business cards. Did you need a website? I had to get a website set up. Did you have software? I had to buy some software that helps me design e-learning. And that price was about $30 a month. Now, that may not seem like a lot, but whether you use it or not, you're paying for that product. Transportation, getting to and from events. Do you have handouts? Are you doing promotional material? What about your taxes? And here's one that I didn't always realize the cost. For example, in the state of Maryland, every year you have to file a audit report, whether you earned money or not. That is, and I know Chris Martin, who's on our chat today, knows this, that is a $300 cost. Something that I didn't realize, and even though I earned no money last year, I had to pay for that audit report with the state of Maryland. Even though I did all the work, that was a $300 outlay. And then, are you members of chambers of commerce, professional association, networking groups? They all have a cost, and you may not think about it, and I didn't think about it at first, but they all have a cost. Okay, the bottom line is, once you have made a decision on the product or service, you saved your money, you figured out what you need your money to spend on, and you're going out, you really need to commit. And I will tell you, in the early days, I didn't commit, I think, as hard as I should have, because I thought, and this is one of the things that many new consultants do, is that I'm going to get out there, I'm going to hand out a whole bunch of business cards, and boom, business is going to come flocking to me. It is a wake-up call. You really need to commit, and you really need to hustle out there to get it, unless you already have a following. Because remember, you already have people who are coming to you. Maybe you worked for another company and you left and people have followed you, or you've got that side business you set up and you got people who regularly coming to you. Word of mouth is one of the greatest ways that you can gain business. And so if you got those people there already, they will tell other people and new business will come. Hey, I know Joe, he does this, he's really good, you should be talking to him. There are 3 common mistakes that each person makes, each new consultant makes, business person makes. Some of them are big, and it's really more on the level of mistake in these areas. And it's talking about the business plan, Mr. Know-It-All, and I call it the invoice to do it, meaning how much you're going to charge. And so Dave, you can ask the question out probably, does your significant other have the temperament to live without a known source of income and risk tolerance? The answer is she did. Now, she's working part-time, and so we knew what the source of income was coming in, but we also knew how much money we had saved. So we knew that we could tolerate this probably for about a year, year and a half. I think a year and a half would have probably been max. And at that time, if I wasn't getting income in, I probably would have to make a decision. Do I pack it in and go back to the corporate world? What am I going to do? So yes, your spouse, your significant other must have a tolerance for that. And it's something you need to talk with that person about and make sure you really have those funds set on the side. You have to have it. And you have to know, what is your timeline? if you don't get a certain amount of business, and you have to think about how much business do you want to get? How many days of work do you want to have in every single year? Do you want to have it every single day? Or do you want to say my target is 150 days of full-time work, or whatever the amount is, for you to know what do you need to survive? So that's a great question. Let's talk about all of these, and I'm going to tell you where I made my mistakes. Business plan. I, like a lot of people, think, oh yeah, I'm just going to go out, I'm going to set up my shingle, and I'm going to start, and didn't have a business plan. I will admit, in March, when I left the bank, I didn't have a business plan written. And then one day, I went to a party, and a professor at Catholic University in the business department, who we've known for quite a while, said to me, so Joe, you've got your business plan all set, and who's your target audience? And I had thought about some of these things, such as who my target audience is, but I didn't have a business plan. And so that night, I came home after the party, got online, searched to find some kind of business plan templates, and actually started to write down things. And it is extremely helpful to do. And I don't mind admitting my mistakes, my failures. I didn't have that business plan. It asked me lots of questions, such as, who is your target audience? How do you know you're going to be successful? What is your marketing plan? Who are you competing against? All of these sorts of things to do. You really need to write these down. Even if the business plan that templates that are out there may have a lot more stuff than you need, but you got to put this in writing. You got to put it down, because it really makes you think. Don't make the mistake that I did. Not do it at first. I did it a little too late. I should have done it earlier. Second, the other thing you need to know is you become Mr. Know-It-All. You are now a tax person. You are now a marketing person. You are a salesperson. You are an expert in your field. So you're not just a trainer. You've got all of these things that you have to know and understand. When are taxes due? How much have I got to put in? The audit report. How do I go about marketing myself? Where do I market myself? Unless you decide that you're going to go out and hire people, which you can do, but can be expensive. You know, if you're looking to kind of keep some of that cost, and if you don't budget for that early, you know, it's going to hurt. Maybe, you know, you decide eventually you need a coach to help you with this. They're all expenses included. So you become Mr. Know-It-All. You have to do a lot of different things, know a lot of different things, and then make some decisions, just like any company does. Do you outsource certain pieces? So you become Mr. Know-It-All. You have to know everything under the sun. Finally, and one of the biggest areas, and I struggled with this in the early days, is how much do you actually charge? Now, I in my head know how much I should be getting for my services. But in the early days, nobody was going to pay you that amount. At least people that I talk to. You may have to reduce that amount. Or maybe what you will do is base it on a project, not an hourly rate, which is down. Maybe you have your hourly rate and you're going to give someone a percentage off. You have to think about a variety. You have to think about how much is your time worth. And when you think about how much your time is worth, you also have to think about such things as, what are your expenses? Do you want to take a vacation? Because of course, when you're on vacation, you're not earning money, and therefore you have to build all of those things in. So the first thing is, how much money are you going to offer? How much money are you going to charge? Do you think you can charge that amount at first, or do you have to offer a lower amount? Or maybe, as some consultants do, they say, look, I'm not going to give you a discount on my rate, my hourly rate, or my fee, or my daily rate, depending on how they bill themselves. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you these extra items that are this much in value. So different consultants do different things with the fees. Some will give you a discount based on so many extra hours. Some will give you a discount because they're brand new. Some will do extra things. And for me, my thing is I am willing to give people a discount if it's more than so many hours worth of work. So if you say the job is going to take X number of hours, it's more than the small amount, boom, I will give you a discount on that. The other thing is there are some consultants who charge in increments. It's every 15 minutes. Whether I do 5 minutes of work or whether I do 3 minutes of work or 12 minutes of work, I'm going to charge you 15 minutes. You have to decide, are you going to charge them the actual time, or are you going to break it up in chunks like that? Again, depends on the client you have, depends on a lot of different things. You need to think these things through as part of how you're charging and what are you going to charge. Okay. One of the other big issues you have to think about is what type of business structure will you be? In my case, I'm the sole proprietor, I'm an LLC. Will you be a loaner with a partner? What are the requirements to start a business in your state and or county? And that's very important. What are the requirements? So for example, here in the state of Maryland, where I am in, it was very, very easy for me to set up my own business. The state of Maryland that handles this has a website and a form to fill out, and it takes you through the process step by step, telling you here are the types of businesses that you can set up, gives you a description, gives you a place to get more information on that particular business, and walks you through. But there are things you really need to have ready to do. Phone number, address, what are you going to call your company, all of those sorts of things. Of course, there's not only the IRS at the federal level, but of course, you have to think about the state and county level. What are their tax requirements? Do you need certain ID numbers? Like for the federal government, you have to get a federal tax ID number. So all of those sorts of things you need to think about. In addition, for your particular business, whatever your business is, whether you be an electrician, a learning consultant, an attorney, whatever it is, are there any special licenses or certifications that you need to operate? Some places, yes, you have to have a license, such as if you're going to have your own hairdresser or salon, beauty salon, you got to have a license there. What are those licenses and certifications? And the other thing you have to ask yourself is, if my industry does not require a certification of some sort, and there are certifications available, is it worth it to get that certification? Will it mean more business for me because people see those letters after me? And again, it really all depends upon the occupation you're in, the business you're in. Do those letters after your name really will bring you more money, more business, etc. And also, how long are you going to do this for? Are you intending to do this for the next 25 years to be as a consultant? Or do you expect maybe I'm just only going to do this for a couple more years? And of course, there are special recognitions. And I know there are people out there who know much, much more about this. And it may be a good thing to go to an attorney or someone to talk about this. But special recognitions of veterans, women, minorities, all of those sorts of things can help you promote your business. Okay. Well, one of the first things that I did was I got a business card, and I spent hours trying to figure this out, talk to people, what do you like, and whatnot. And this is an image of my very first business card. And I went to Vistaprint. And again, this is nothing wrong with going to Vistaprint. They provide a service for a good price. You give them what you want, tell them what you want, they do it, you get the templates, etc. And man, I thought I was hot stuff. Let me tell you, I thought I was hot stuff with this particular business card. I had my name, A Fool for Learning. I had my little motto, Learn, Perform, Succeed. I had my title, CEO Learning Producer. I had my website on it. And man, how do you, and I thought I was hot stuff. And so I had this card, and therefore I went out, I thought I was hot stuff. And yes, it was a big mistake, because I started to learn that as I went around to networking events and I would hand out my card, people would look at me and they go, oh, this is really interesting. And then they'd have this really puzzled look on them. You know, what is a fool for learning? What is a learning producer? They had no clue. It's not as though I'm giving them a card saying, I'm a handyman, I'm a plumber, an electrician, I'm a tax attorney, I'm an attorney that specializes in estate planning. None of that sort of thing. Okay, so I had to start to literally recalculate a number of different things. in my branding. And that's really for me and what I do. And when I go talk to people, branding is extremely important and it can really help you make or break how people look at you. And I think I lost probably a good 2 months without not having the right branding, so that when people knew who I was, when I talked to people, they got a better sense of who I was. So first thing we need to do is we need to talk about a company name. Again, for some people, calling it, Joseph Barone LLC might be fine, because Joseph Barone LLC might be a plumber or an attorney or whatever the case might be. And you say that on your car, that's pretty much easy. But I decided to go with a slightly different name, A Fool for Learning. And actually, the name has really helped me, because people will look at it and ask me about it. What does it mean? Tell me more about your name. How did you come up with the name? And so that actually helped give me a chance to have a much deeper conversation with a person about myself and my company, because people thought it was such a cool name. And people would say, well, what does it mean? I said, well, if you think about literature and you think about how we think about fools in literature, people don't think much about a fool, but in reality, the fool hears what people don't hear, sees what most people don't see, and in reality tells the truth. He is actually the most insightful of all the people in the court. And most people don't think that, but in reality, he is. And so I thought A Fool for Learning was a great title. And actually, I had that title for a number of years. It was my learning blog at work. And I had that for about 5 years, a blog where I post things about learning, about training, all sorts of things. The second thing is your title, your company title. Now, if you look at these articles in Fast Company and Fortune and a whole bunch of others, and you read articles on the web and you see things on LinkedIn, some people have got these really, really cool names: Chief Experience Officer, Digital Prophet, Innovation Sherpa. And they're all pretty cool names, but they're usually for larger companies. But for many of us, sometimes choosing a simpler name, in a second, is more important. And I chose the name Learning Producer because I heard that name at a conference. I said, that's what I am. I produce learning. That was a great name, I thought, because it was at this particular conference and they were using it all over. And I said, this is great. In reality, Chief Learning Producer meant absolutely nothing to anyone. It was again, part of that learning lesson, that sorrow, if you want to call it, where I gave it the wrong name. I gave myself the wrong name. And I realized this when I was talking to a friend of mine, an IT person at the bank one day, and he was telling me about someone, another IT person I know, and his wife had left the bank and struck out on her own and had a name. And I was like, I really need to change my name. Chief Learning Producer means absolutely nothing. But if I say I'm a corporate learning consultant, people say, oh, you're in business, you deal with corporations, you deal with learning, you're a consultant. That makes a whole different world. So people have a slightly better understanding of what I do. Not perfect, but a slightly better understanding. So changing your title. Third, a logo. I think a good logo, again, it depends on what you're doing. I think a good logo really helps make a difference. It helps make a story. In mine, I've gotten so many compliments on this particular logo that I had created for me. People look at it and say, oh, that's a great name. That's a great logo. And I can use that as an introduction. And I put it on my emails. It's on my website. It's, of course, on my business card. It's everywhere. Kind of help branding. And notice you got that little 3-word motto: learn, perform, succeed. We help you and your organization and your people to learn so that they can perform the job that they're doing so that they can succeed. And as part of the package that I got, I had designed for me, was I had a social media icon because I knew I was doing blogs at that point. I was writing blogs and I was thinking seriously about doing podcasts. And one of the things that was mentioned to me was that the person who designed my logo said, if you're going to do social media, you should have a very simple image on it. And so we came up with this image the kind of the fool logo. No one else has this particular one, although some people might say Motley Fool is somewhat close, but it's not really quite. And I have this logo. So on my podcast, you'll see it on my podcast. You'll see it wherever. If you see me in Zoom, that logo is there. It's not my picture, it's my logo. And the other thing I had done was other branded objects. So yes, I did say I wanted, for example, something for paper. If I print out a paper, an invoice, I wanted some sort of header or footer. I got that done too. So we threw all of that sort of stuff in. And finally, the last thing was we cleaned up my motto a little bit. We made it a little bit sharper. And as you can see, the motto is basically what I said to all of you, helping organizations learn so that they can perform at maximum efficiency and succeed. Now, let's just take a look at a moment of, again, get this right here. Here we go. Here's the old business card. Again, I thought I was hot stuff when I got this in July using Vistaprint. Again, nothing against Vistaprint. Here it is now. You notice that the business card is so much different. It says a lot more. And I use this a lot when I meet people, at least when we were having physical networking events. I use this business card a lot because people would get the business card and they look at it and they start to put it away and they say, no. Turn it over. And I say, on the back right there are the services that I can offer to your firm. And let's try to talk about one or two of the services that I offer that can help you better perform, to help you make more money, to streamline things for you. And so you literally have this as a walking billboard, in a sense, a marquee on a movie theater, a website that's on a small card that says, here's what I do. Here are all the things. So one of the questions that has come up in the chat is, how did you determine the amount of money to invest in the beginning? How would you recommend to go about the calculation? So I literally think you have to sit down with yourself, sit down and not just simply a back of the envelope, but maybe a little bit more than a back of the envelope, but not necessarily doing a whole spreadsheet. But you can do a whole spreadsheet and literally list down what you think are all of your costs. You need to buy a new computer. How much is that going to cost? $1,000. Okay. Do you need to get Microsoft Office for it? Well, that's another one-time fee or monthly fee of X amount of dollars. And you've got to put that out at least over the first year. The learning software I bought, Adobe Captivate, that's $30 a month. Got to write that down. How much does it cost for you to live? What is your mortgage? What do you think are your food expenses, your gas expenses, your electric expenses? How much is it for your car? Putting extra money in case something happens, maybe an extra $1,000 or $2,000 in that. You literally have got to sit down and start calculating all of those costs and talk with your significant other, talk with your friends, talk with other people in business about what their costs are, because, and I didn't do that as much. I'll be the first to admit that's where I've made some of my mistakes. But I've always, on the other hand, been a saver. I'm not someone to always go run out and spend tons and tons of money on the latest gadget, the latest doodad, the latest style of fashion. And so one of the things, for example, that I knew I had extra money that came in that I literally put on the side was my annual leave. So when I left the bank, I had about 30 days of annual leave that I was able to cash out. That's 6 weeks worth of salary that also went in addition to whatever I thought I needed. So I had extra money saved, probably more than I thought I needed, but in reality, it probably was a good amount. So you literally got to sit down and start writing things down, asking questions, get a book on consulting, okay? What do you need to start your own business? Maybe I should have gone to the Small Business Association and talked to those people, the retirees there, about starting my own business. But in some ways, it's kind of me being a Sicilian. We use the term in Sicilian, testadora, being hard-headed, thinking, I know everything, I can go out and do it, not a problem. Okay? positioning myself. So the other thing you need to do is you need to network with yourself. You need to understand, of course, and this is part of your marketing plan, who are my ideal clients? And even though I think my ideal clients are small to medium-sized businesses, even now I'm starting to think maybe I need to start going after some of the larger organizations and start bidding on some of that work. So one of the things you need to think about is who are your clients? Who are your ideal clients? Second, how do I position myself as a leader, especially a thought leader? So again, this all depends upon the business that you're in or the type of consulting you want to do I want people to see me as a thought leader? Do I want people to see me as out there on the cutting edge so that they will recognize me and they will come to me and say, I want Joe to work for me. I want Chris. I want David. I want Reed. I want Carolina. I want Mark or whoever else. I want all of them. I want that person to work for me because he's a thought leader. He's putting out a lot of stuff. He has a lot of good stuff out on his blog, on his podcast. He's got that radio show going. You want people to think that you are a thought leader. Again, it depends upon what business you're in, what product and service that you are selling. And again, even if you're not going out there and putting out a blog and a podcast, you do want to stay on top of your game. You want to continue learning. You want to go to conferences. And again, some occupations require you to get so many continuing education credits. Some don't. But it is important for you if you want to be known as a leader, even if it's not a thought leader, but someone who really knows their stuff, who's on the cutting edge, who understands what the latest products and services are in my business. You need to get training yourself. So don't skimp on your own training. Go out there and go to a conference, go to trade shows, do what you need to do to stay on top of your game. Because if you're not, people eventually will realize, oh, you're kind of old school. Yeah, you can do this sort of work and we'll give you that, but you don't know all the latest stuff. So always think about not just yourself getting out there as a thought leader, but keeping yourself at the top of your game. The other thing you have to start thinking about is not only being a thought leader. Let's say you're being a thought leader, you're going to put together podcasts, a blog, you're going to share your knowledge. And that was a point that the marketing person in my networking group makes on a regular basis, is that you need to share your knowledge. You want people to know that you are that thought leader, that you are that person who knows his or her stuff, and get out there and share some of that knowledge at no cost. And part of that is, how do I reach my target audience? What do I do? Do I buy tchotchkes? Do I belong to networking groups, chambers of commerce, go to trade shows? What do I need to do? And again, this all depends upon your particular business. For some people, you need to go out there and do that a lot. For some, you may not need, because business is coming in, especially via word of mouth. And one thing that you can always do, in which in a sense I'm doing right now, is you're giving a talk. You're giving a talk, you're sharing your knowledge with other people to let them know that, hey, I'm here, I'm available, I'm an expert in my field, I'm sharing my knowledge with you. It's a way of getting your name out, because remember, it's not just necessarily, it is not just necessarily they're going to be your clients. They may not be your clients, but they may know someone who would be a good client for you. So again, when you go out and do these things, you're getting your name out there. And again, it's not necessarily you. It may not be them, but it may be someone that they know. Again, what professional associations are you a part of? What networking groups do you belong to? Do you belong to a chamber of commerce? What about your nonprofit and volunteer opportunities? It's always good to have something, again, that's a way of networking. It's a way of people getting to know you. It's also a way of connecting with others. So as a Boy Scout leader, and I've been a Boy Scout leader for almost 40 years, over 35 years, when I get a chance to make that connection with another Scout leader, I do. And there may be all sorts of other sources of ways of making connections. Again, What insights can I share will be of interest and value that will keep people going? And of course, one of the key things is what social and media channel shall I use? Where does my audience live? And nowadays, for most of us who are in the business world, LinkedIn is one of those key ways. And so I have not only a personal page, but I also have a company page. And you can see both of them there. And it's very important that if you are in business, you are trying to get your people out, you're trying to get word of mouth out there, is that you keep them up to date. Okay, so making certain, for example, that your experience is up to date, making sure that your skills and endorsements is correct. Get recommendations from people, ask people. When I left, before I left the bank, someone who had worked on Wall Street for many years, who was working for the bank, said to me, Joe, you really should get a number of recommendations. There are a lot of people here in this organization who like you, who respect the work you do. You should improve the number of recommendations, get more recommendations. And so I went from 2 or 3, as you can see, to over 24 recommendations from people at the bank from a variety of places all over the world, your accomplishments, your interests, etc. Again, make sure that you're in a variety of social media channels. I am also, for example, on YouTube. I take my podcasts and I put them into YouTube. I also have videos that are on YouTube. My podcasts also appear on Apple Podcasts. I'm on Spotify. Okay, and I'm also on Twitter. Now, I will say Twitter doesn't do much for me. Again, it depends, I guess, on the business that you're in. Again, are you paying someone to market you on LinkedIn, push you out? Are you paying someone to help market you on Twitter? But I'm out there. I put out there. Some people do link with me. Some people do try to comment. And the other thing that you should be doing to position yourself is to like and to comment on what people are doing. Again, the more that you like and the more that you comment, the more recognized that you will get out there, and people will start to see you more and more. And again, I try to keep it professional. I don't get into the politics. I don't get into all of the other stuff that goes on. I really try to keep it as professional and as possible and not worry about other things that are happening around, because that's what I want to say. This is my professional page. My professional page is my professional page. My personal page is my personal page. But even then, I've even cut back on a lot of the personal stuff. Okay? The other thing you need to ask yourself is, what does your website say about you? Is it up to date? Is it updated on a periodic basis? Or is it 15 or 20 years old? For example, there is someone I know whose web page really looks like it was designed 20 years ago. The graphics are horrible. The wording is terrible. It hasn't been updated in a long time. And you could tell. And so what does that say to you when people go to your web page and they look at it and they say, this is like 20 years old. This is terrible. Is your page up to date? Does it say new things about you? Are you regularly updating it? So you'll notice I have a news section, and on the particular news section from this particular image, I have a talk about St. John's, what we're doing to talk today. Today I updated because I'll be doing a talk next week, as crazy as this sounds, entitled Safety and Health in Cleaning Churches. It actually should have been Safety and Health in Cleaning Houses of Worship. And we're going to talk about, in that talk, we're going to talk about what churches are doing, what churches or houses of worship should be doing in this day and age of COVID, especially when you have many times houses of worship relying on volunteers to help clean and disinfect their churches after their church services. So we're going to talk about what should churches or houses of worship be doing, how should they be training their volunteers, and all those sorts of things. So we're going to be looking at that sort of stuff. So thank you. And I'm going to unshare. I'm going to stop sharing. Let me see if we can get this right. There we go. And let me see if I can try to figure out how do I make Carolina the the host again. Let's see.
We're back, Joe. Thank you
Excellent. Thank
so
you.
much for that. That was amazing. Thank you for sharing your insights and your expertise with us. We learned so much. I am going to check with the Q&A box right now. I'm not sure that I see anything. It may be because you're currently listed as the host, Joe, so it may just be going to you directly.
Yeah, I got a couple of questions in the chat, and I tried to incorporate that into the talk.
Amazing. I actually have a question of my own, so I don't mind getting us started. So I know that you spoke about the importance of seeing through your vision, your mission statement, your branding, your positioning, what you stand for, having a good website, all of that good stuff. But what really makes it all come together? What's the special sauce?
I think the special sauce is the word that I put earlier, commitment or commit. You really have to commit to doing this. If you're going to do it half-hearted, you're not going to be successful. You have to commit. So when people call you up and say, I need to have a question, I need some work done, you get it done as quickly as possible and to be on top of things. You can't let things slack. And so that's that whole thing of, hello, my name is Mr. Know-It-All. You really have to do things, and you have to always be working. Sometimes I'll work on a Saturday morning. Sometimes I'll work on a Sunday morning. If it's quiet, recording a podcast, whatever, you really have to commit. And if you're not willing to commit to it, it's probably not going to work.
Thank you, Joe. And it shows your commitment, your perseverance, and the fact that you're still reinventing yourself is amazing.
Thank you.
We're very proud of you. I have more questions, but I want to see if anyone wants to come off mute. You can raise your hand and we can bring you off mute if you have a question for Joe.
I do see a question in here from David. How do you track the effectiveness? And that's a great thing. And that's a great answer. So I don't monetize any of my podcasts. There are people who monetize them, who have sponsors, etc. I don't do any of that. I look to see how many people are hitting them, but it's a little hard because I also have stuff all over the place. I have stuff in Podbean, which is where I do my podcast. I have videos, etc. So I do kind of keep an eye on that. What I also keep is more anecdotal. As I talk to people, did you look at my video? Have you heard my podcast? Have you talked about it? And so it's been somewhat effective in the sense of I had someone reach out to me to actually help teach new business owners podcasting because they saw my podcasting channel. They liked some of the things I was saying. They liked how I generally organized it. I had met them at a networking event. And so I was able to use that to potentially get a client to teach a class. Now, because of COVID, that all fell apart, unfortunately. But it is there, and it may not be a direct source, but it is an indirect source because people hear me, see me, and they say, oh, yeah, I heard your podcast, or I liked your podcast on X, Y, and Z. So it's not a tracking in the sense of I'm tracking numbers like a marketing person would. And for example, our marketing person today in our networking group talked about a video he did for a real estate agent and how he sent it to people who they tracked it on people who knew the real estate agent, people who didn't know, and how long they each watched it. But for me at this point, it's more kind of just being out there, letting people know I'm there and using it more as an indirect as opposed to a direct kind of effectiveness.
That's a really good answer, Joe. I think we can also relate it here in the alumni relations world. We think a lot about quantitative and qualitative measurements for what we do. Mm-hmm. Mark says it often, what we do is an art, but we try to make it a science, and trying to find the right metrics is always a challenge because while you can quickly pinpoint, X many people showed up to an event, the quality of what took place in that event, that's really, really hard to measure. Mm-hmm. How many successful interactions occurred, how many students were impacted by the alumni who spoke, et cetera, or alumni impacted by other alumni in our case right now. So that's really interesting that you shared that. Thank you.
No problem.
I'd quickly like to point out that we have another 10 minutes. Is that right, Joe? Because you have a hard stop at 7:05.
5, actually,
5
yeah,
minutes.
7:05. Yes.
So we have space for maybe 1 or 2 more questions at the most. Don't be shy, everyone.
They're beating down the doors, I can tell.
Well, I'll wrap this up with one more,
Sure.
if that's okay.
Sure.
What was your favorite podcast that you recorded? What was the episode and what was it about?
The favorite of the 88 I've recorded, plus all the videos, I think the favorite was called "The Soup Has No Love in It." And it was about a conversation myself and the CIO of the bank had over at lunch one day. There's a whole group of us at lunch, and we were talking about the cafeteria in our building and how the food was good, but it wasn't as good as it had been like 6 months before. And the conversation focused on, yes, the people were cooking the food, they were doing it right, but they had no love in what they were doing. They were just a routine. They didn't kind of like give it that little extra in doing it. And that's one of my favorite ones. And that's one that people have liked. And some people have commented on me, people I've known, and said, oh, yeah, we heard that one with you and the CIO in the group, and the soup has no love in it. That's one of probably the more popular ones I've done. And there's been a couple of others, such as how do you, the very first podcast and the second podcast about the first meeting and the follow-up. When you meet a new client, a new potential client for the first time, or even if you meet someone who's not going to be a potential client right then and there, what do you do? How do you follow up with them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we all need to do a little bit more of making more soup and filling it with love. That's for sure. If we all approach our lives, our jobs in that way, I'm sure that we'll be more successful. We'll see more enjoyment in our professional and personal lives. And
Yeah,
ahead,
we did
Joe.
get one more question. Knowing what I know now, it came privately to me, which is why you didn't see it. What would I have done differently when you started? I think the first thing would have been, number one, working on the business plan much earlier than I did. That was the first thing, because I think that would have really given me a better insight. And second, I'll be honest with you, really probably talking to more people, more consultants, people out there and saying, hey, what are you doing? What have you done right? And what have you done wrong? Instead of saying, I can figure this out. I read a book or two. I can figure this out. I think that's what I would have done. The marketing, the business plan, and really talking to more people early on. Those things I think would have helped me do, I wouldn't have lost at least a good 2 months worth of time in networking.
Thank you, Joe. I'm just looking at the time. If there are no more questions, I just want to say thank you again for your time, for the beautiful background as well. If you want to talk a little bit about it, I know I've heard the story, but it's, there you go.
There you go.
Rep in St. John's.
I realized I don't have a really nice St. John's polo shirt. I'm going to have to get one, or get the kids to get me one.
Luckily, you know someone in alumni relations. We can make that happen for you.
I've got lots of T-shirts, but I don't have a really nice polo shirt. In the background, for those of you who are interested, this is part of my Boy Scouting collection. I've traveled all over the world. Some of these are from the U.S. here. Some of these are things that I personally have earned and places I've went. But some of these are places that I've been to, whether it be India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal, Mexico, a whole bunch of different countries over the years. And if anyone ever comes to my house, you get to come down not only to my office, because it's all over my office, but it's also downstairs in the basement. I've got stuff all over the basement. And my significant other, the missus, is not happy about that.
That's great, Joe. Your well-roundedness, your worldliness shows not only in the background, but the way that you speak. We are so grateful that you decided to spend this evening with us. And again, thank you to everyone who participated right now. David, Mark, Phyllis, Rita, thank you guys for for joining us this evening, and I'll give you the final word, Joe.
Carolina, first of all, thank you for all that you do for the alumni, for keeping us connected. It's greatly appreciated. You really do a fantastic job. You work hard at it. Thank you, Mark, who's behind the scenes there too. Known Mark for many years, as many of you know. I want to thank you, Mark, for all the work you've done, the friendship, both of you. I really greatly appreciate it, to both of you. And go Johnnies.
Go Johnnies. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.